The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the host and guest and do not reflect the opinions or policies of the station, its owners, or its advertisers. All content should be considered editorial in nature. Listener discretion is advised.
Recorded live from the radio studios of WFAY and WMRV, Androlonis Media presents Cumberland County's smartest hour of talk radio. Welcome back to another edition of the Carolina Cabinet.
Well, everybody, good morning and welcome to the Carolina Cabinet. I'm Peter Pappas. I'll be your host this morning. We're proud to be the only homegrown conservative talk radio show in this region, and I know this is the smartest hour of radio. Our job is to give a voice to the conservatives of Fayetteville, Cumberland County, and beyond. If you're listening to us, you're listening to us on WFAY 100.1 and The River, WMRV 106.5. In the studio this morning, I welcome Bishop Antoine Minor.
Here.
Yeah, good to see you, Bishop. And welcoming Mr. Stephen Horn, independent journalist from the Raleigh area. Good morning, sir. As we dive into our show, we appreciate you tuning in and spending time with us this morning. Please take a moment to like, share, or follow us on Facebook and look for us at thecarolinacabinet.com. And you can find links to our shows and how to listen on your favorite podcast broadcaster. So with that, good morning. So we're doing a little bit different this morning. We're not in the main studio, so I'm not going to do the regular music and all. So Bishop, Pastor Josh isn't here. Can you give us some good news?
I can give you some good news. I can.
Let me play your intro because every hero needs a theme song. Okay.
I need my theme song.
So, all right, let's go, baby. Let's go.
Since 2012, Joshua Goodman has been the senior pastor at the Cliffdale Christian Center, a dynamic church and ministry located in West Fayetteville. Join our friend Pastor Goodman for a podcast or a live sermon in person at 6427 Cliffdale Road. Now for today's good news. Here is Joshua Goodman.
And this morning we welcome Bishop Minor.
Good morning. I definitely have some good news. We've just come out of resurrection season, and now we are entering into the season of Pentecost. I was reading the scripture today. I was actually reading in Acts chapter 27 and verse 44, and it talks about when Paul was being transported, and they came up against a great storm, and the storm beat against the ship, and the ship began to break into pieces, and Centurion was going to kill everyone on board. And down in verse 44, it talks about, and the rest, some on boards and some on broken pieces of the ship. And so it came to pass that they escaped all safe to land. As I was thinking about that, I was thinking about how sometimes in life, we find ourselves going through storms. We find ourselves going through situations and circumstances that are beating up against us. It feels as if it is tearing us apart. It is ripping us from limb to limb. Seems like as soon as we think we've got our footing, another wave comes and knocks us off our feet. And we seem to be constantly caught in the undertow of life. But I want to tell you, as Pastor Josh would say, my good friends, I want to tell you that there is good news. And the good news is this, that the Bible says that though some came across on boards and some on broken pieces of the ship, said it came to pass that they all escaped safely. So what that says is that no matter how you have to get to your destiny, no matter how you have to get to your purpose, no matter what is coming at you, the good news is that there is a predetermined and predestined outcome that you will make it to the other side. And not just make it to the other side, but the Bible says that they all made it safely, some on boards and some on broken pieces, but they all made it safely. I don't care how you have to get there. I don't care what it takes. God will ensure that you make it to your destiny and your destination, whether on broken pieces or on boards, you'll make it there safely. That, my friends, is the good news for today.
Conservative talk radio in Eastern North Carolina. You're listening to the Carolina Cabinet. This is the morning show your daddy wanted you to listen to.
Well, welcome back to the Carolina Cabinet. I'm here with Bishop Minor and Mr. Stephen Horn. So Stephen, I've been following you on Facebook quite a bit, or TikTok, all these socials. I'm a Gen Xer, so I get them all mixed up, But I've been really admiring your works. But how did you get to where you're at? So tell us a little bit about yourself. And we were discussing off air. You've got a very interesting background, so fill us in. Welcome.
Yep, thanks for having me. My name's Stephen Horn, and I grew up in Person County and northern Wake County. That's where I live now, sort of always in the Triangle area of North Carolina, but a little bit away from the cities. I was homeschooled growing up, and I sort of got into journalism in 2020. We all remember the Summer of Love, the George Floyd protests and riots. So my first publication as an independent journalist was going out on the streets of Raleigh and observing what I could see with my own eyes, what I could capture with my cell phone. Didn't quite match what the mainstream media was showing from these events. So I decided, hey, if I can see this, if I can record this, I am going to publish it so that the public who is staying home can also see this discrepancy and have a little better understanding of what's really going on. And so that was my foray, and I have certainly had a lot of adventures since then.
Okay. So so that was 2020. And what was the first largest misperception you thought you started to expose? What was like one of your first couple of stories you put out?
Yeah, so the first couple of stories were just reporting on the Black Lives Matter and Antifa demonstrations in 2020. So, one of the very first instances where I really said, hey, I can do better than this is it was a rally with a couple hundred participants in Raleigh that was organized by the Party for Socialism and Liberation, if I recall correctly. So they were marching.
That sounds very noble. So who was that? I mean,
yeah, so they're a sort of minor communist party, third party, maybe sixth or seventh party, depending on how you count it.
Just a minor little communist party in our country.
So,
just a minor.
A different minor.
Different minor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they organized some of the the pro-Palestine protests in DC, like when Netanyahu visited, I believe last summer. There are some viral videos of a gentleman from Durham who was burning an American flag in Union Station. Some of y'all might remember that. That was a Party for Socialism and Liberation organized event. But this was back in 2020, and they were marching behind their, hammer and sickle banners. Their banners that said socialism. And somehow in the WRAL reporting on that event, they just managed to not take any pictures. So I remember looking through a photo gallery and being like, okay, there's pictures of participants, pictures of signs, but where's the picture of the hammer and sickle?
But the participants they took pictures of were the technical peaceful protesters.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that night was fairly peaceful.
Yeah.
Besides maybe vandalizing a couple buildings, I think they might have, graffitied a church. They lined up, they squared off with the police, after the police told them to get out of the road a couple times. But generally, that night was fairly peaceful compared to some of the other nights in Raleigh. But just that stark contrast, because there's, that was one of the topics of discussion at the time is, how tied to communists is the Black Lives Matter movement? There is some material on their website about being at least skeptical of the nuclear family, some of these neo-Marxist ideas. And so for when I'm looking at it, I'm seeing people online discussing, even locally, but they're not being provided with the facts to, accurately form an opinion. So that's really, my main motivation has been to provide people with facts so that they can, I don't do as much opinion. I don't do as much telling people what conclusions to come to, but I try to provide them the facts because the facts are the foundation of any good opinion.
Well, and I think one of the things that I enjoy about the TikToks I follow that you're on, and of course I'm just in awe of that because you just seem to be really technically proficient at that, but you do seem to look for the separation of emotion from fact. And you have been trying to report, this is what I see, and make your decision. You're not like some of the new media that They're there to tell us what to think and how to think. So I think you've done a really good job of presenting what's there and letting the consumer consume it how they need to consume it. How has your reception been or interface been with traditional media like WRAL, TVD? Have you run afoul of any of those folks?
Not, I haven't necessarily had too much involvement with them. I mostly focus on covering the stories that they don't cover. Sometimes it's before they cover them, but I'm just one person. They have, I don't even know how many people are on staff at WRAL or the News and Observer. So they're producing a lot more coverage. So I tend to focus on either the stories that I think they get wrong because of their biases or because of where they're coming from, their editorial perspective, or the stories that they're not aware of because the people who have information don't trust them to tell the story accurately, or stories that they would choose not to cover because they don't fit with what they see as newsworthy.
Mm-hmm.
So you were
Bishop.
pretty much born out of a need for transparency and the need to correct the narrative that you said there was a lot of false information or misleading or half-truths that were being presented to the people. I love that because that was kind of the story that I had when I guess, started loving Trump. It wasn't an automatic, oh, I just like this guy, I'm going to vote for him. It was, as I was watching the media, and I would watch press conferences, and I would watch hearings, and I would watch different things that were going on, and then I would see the clips on the news, and I would sit back and say, wait a minute, that's not what was said. That's not the context in which that was said. They're only given the snippets. And I started to feel, in a sense, that I had to use my voice to speak truth to power and to use my voice to shed light on, I guess, the lies that I was witnessing and what I saw people believing and falling for. So it sounds like that's kind of how you got started as well with this project. Is you saw the media, you saw what they were putting out, you saw the coverage that was being done, and you said, wait a minute, there's more to this than what we're seeing, and someone has to be the voice and the tool that's used to get the rest of this out and to get the truth out, and you felt you needed to be that individual and that tool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. As you mentioned, President Trump for a lot of people was the one who with his communication style was able to cut through and really make people realize that. I don't think the mainstream media started being biased when Trump ran for office. I think this has been an issue for a long time, and probably grown worse and worse as sort of the mainstream corporate media sort of drifts leftwards, even in areas that are conservative dominated. But yeah, with from 2016 onward, I think there's been a whole lot of people who have started to realize, hey, wait a minute, these outlets may present themselves in sort of a middle of the road neutral manner. That doesn't mean that is actually the editorial policies being enacted behind closed doors. When you watch a clip or you see what points they decide to make in a story, that's something you can look at and analyze. But what kind of goes that you can't even see is what stories they decide to report on and what stories they don't. That's kind of hidden, not at all. You can't even get those clues from listening or watching or reading.
Mm-hmm.
So I have another question, because you talked about these editorial decisions, and I know oftentimes the ones who are villainized for spreading the false information are the reporters, are the anchormen, the anchorwomen, are the ones who are on the camera, or the ones behind the mic. But those stories, those the narratives, what is being pushed out, is being decided on at the top levels of these news organizations, and then push down to the faces of these organizations saying, this is the message, this is the narrative. And for me, and I think for a lot of people who watch the news and legacy news and what, it seems like everybody's saying, they're all saying the same thing. They're all telling the same lie. They're all saying the same, they're all using the same words, the same talking points. It's like they're parroting someone else. And so it begs the question, are all of these news outlets in some way connected while they're all saying the exact same thing?
Well, I think even if they're not overtly coordinating, they all tend to be hiring from, the same schools, the same journalism programs. UNC has a journalism school, and the students coming out of there tend to be left wing. So even if the station isn't setting out to push things towards a certain narrative with their editorial decisions, even just who they're hiring as reporters will, kind of set them in that course. And if you happen to be a reporter who doesn't lean that way, you're not of the left-wing persuasion, then yeah, sometimes, maybe it was a story about COVID. I believe, some of the independent journalists who have left corporate media and, started out on their own, like Ivory Hecker, have said, yeah, their COVID stories, they didn't want us, challenging the narrative at all, even when, they had well-sourced, well-researched stories that they could bring to the public. I was like, no, we're not too interested in that.
Good to know. Good to know. Wow. So, like you said, they're hiring from the same pools, so you're going to get the same types of individuals. And I guess it's to say, I guess in that regard, the narrative that we're hearing, that we're getting, is intentional because they are purposefully, they understand that if we hire from these institutions, from these schools, from these organizations, we're going to get this type of reporter. We're going to get this type of individual in that seat. So in essence, I guess it is intentional that they hire these individuals because they already know that these individuals come with a certain predisposed and predetermined narrative already built, and it's already hardwired in them. So if I hire from this pool, I'm going to get what this pool gives.
Yeah, and I think they're sort of they developed into their own insular bubble where they consider their average to be the default. Okay, so if you might be right wing, you might be moderate right wing in terms of the general public, but for media that's far right because their center isn't the center of the country, it's the center of them and their friends and the people they work with. So they don't even necessarily see it as pushing a specific agenda, they just see that as the default. And one example of that would be like, how do you report on people who identify as transgender? Do you refer to them by the pronouns that they tell you to, or do you refer to them by the pronouns that are, sort of immutable and can't be changed? So for them, when they're referring to people by their preferred pronouns, they're not even necessarily doing that because they're like, we want to push this ideology. They just see that as the default because to them, their worldview is the default, and there are people to the left of them and people to the right of them. But we look at them and we're like, well, objectively speaking, you are on the left. You are on the left compared to the average American. You are definitely on the left compared to us. So we come at stories with different values, different perspective, a different worldview. And so, we're interested in, sometimes it's the same facts being viewed in different light, or sometimes there are facts that we believe are relevant, we believe are newsworthy, that they don't. For instance, whether someone who has committed a crime is in the country legally. Some people don't care. Other people say, hey, that's actually very relevant. So, that's sort of one instance of how even just the facts that you choose are influenced by your worldview and what you believe matters.
Got you. Okay. That is, yeah. Because we look at media, like you said, since 2016, uh, for me, the integrity, and I'm sure it's been there for a long time. The biases have been there, but they weren't as polarized back then. They were there. It's like looking back at old TV shows, and certain narratives were in there. We just really kind of glossed past them. You look at shows like MASH, where they had the one soldier who dressed up as a woman all the time. We just kind of laughed it off. It was nothing. But standing in today and looking back, you realize that many of these narratives were being pushed back then. We just glossed over them. So it's the same for me with the media. It's like looking back, many of the things that are frustrating me about the media today were visible back then, but they were not as overt as they are now. They were more kind of mixed in the batter. Now, the ingredients are sat on the table so that you can clearly see what is going into this cake, if you want to call it that, and what's being served to the American people and people as a whole. Not just the media in America, the media around the world has the ingredients have been placed on the counter so that everyone can see exactly what's going into this cake. But then the other part of it is, you see it, you don't like it, but they're like, well, this is the only cake you're getting, so now you have to eat it. I think the good thing is when you have journalists like yourself who are able to step back and say, nope, that's not true. I'm not pushing that narrative. I'm going to stand on my values, stand on my principles, and deliver to the people accurate information. And I'm going to stand on what journalism is supposed to be. Then people like you, and I'm sure it's happened, people like you get attacked and blackballed and all types of things. So how has that aspect been for you, being that voice that says, I'm not going to push the narrative, I'm going to speak truth to power, I'm going to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. I'm going to tell the story as it really is and let the people decide, and not try to force feed them an opinion. How has the response to you been?
I think Peter wanted to jump in there with something, maybe a break.
Are you in there, Peter?
Yeah, I'm in here. So, Bishop, we're always talking about food, and you're baking a cake, and I hope Stephen went to school at least to learn some shorthand, because you just dumped out a lot on his plate. But we have to close out this half, and what I'm going to do is just we're going to hop off, and we're going to hop right back in. And in the middle. All right, and welcome back to the Carolina Cabinet. I'm Peter. I'll be your host. I'm here with Bishop Minor. Good morning. And with Mr. Stephen Horn. So before we took a kind of a belly flop of a break, everything on my side just kind of died, so I had to restart. And then Windows told me I had to update too, so sorry, guys. Okay, Bishop, you gave young Mr. Horn quite a bit of things to contemplate. So you want to restate a little bit?
Yeah, what I was asking before the break was, with all of the nonsense that's pretty much going on in media and all of the kind of left-leaning majority of media, I'm sure you get a lot of backlash from, I don't know, maybe other media outlets or journalists or even individuals about the content that you're providing. How has that been with you providing that voice of truth, with you kind of shining a light on the whole story and not just little snippets? What has the backlash, what has the experience been for you, whether it be from other journalists, legacy media, individuals who view and listen to your content, whether it's on TikTok or on other platforms? How's that been for you?
Yeah, anytime, some of my content, whether it's an article or a social media post, anytime it reaches into that sort of left-wing liberal audience, I definitely get people saying like, what is this? Is this right-wing propaganda? In terms of the mainstream outlets themselves, I'm not sure I'm a big enough fish to even register on their radar, but yeah, for sure, it's like a whole different world when someone who's used to that mainstream media sees, something that's a little bit different. It's something they're not used to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So has anybody threatened to come by your house?
Someone did come by my house once. It was a member of Patriot Front. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that group. They're the ones who like to march around in matching polos and khakis with their white supremacist manifesto. Oh. So one of them was out distributing some literature at a rally in Raleigh that I was covering, which is on a completely unrelated topic. I made some posts. I read their manifesto on their website, and I was like, this is what their manifesto says. And so apparently the gentleman who was passing out flyers didn't like that too much. So he stopped by my house, which was about a 30-minute drive away, and dropped one of those flyers in my mailbox. And he also messaged me on social media with my address. And I was like, you can get that from voter records. Like, wow, you're such a genius. I'm so scared of your deductive capabilities. Like, I put my name out there. It's not too hard.
Bishop, I don't know, man, but he sounds like he trolls his enemies like I do.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense, Stephen. I don't know. You don't know the body of my work, but I pretty much kill him with kindness and big vocabulary. And I like to think sometimes I'm like Doc Holliday out of Tombstone, when I say, I know, how about a spelling contest? Because some of these guys that get angry with me, down here, it's just a lack of higher functioning ability, I guess. But so no real threats against you. You've been treated fairly, I mean, you think?
Yeah, I've run into some leftists who are... I say the only thing that kept them from engaging in violence was that there were eyes on them, and they didn't want negative reporting about them. But they definitely would have been willing to use violence against me to stop me from documenting what was happening, just because of who I am and what I believe.
Right. So was that more in a like you said, eyes on, public setting, rally type of thing? Okay. So how many, how do I put this? What is your weekly output, you think? Like, how many stories are you trying to cover weekly, monthly? Do you set a goal for yourself, or are you just kind of, when the mood strikes, let's do it?
Yeah, so I've been trying to ramp up a little this year. I would like to go full time at some point. So one thing I do every week, I publish sort of a weekly roundup of some stories. So that'll be, a couple paragraphs about, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 different stories that week in the Triangle area. That's at, thisweekinthetriangle.com. And then this year I'm shooting for one article as well a week. Where it's a longer, more in-depth story about, something that's happening locally that I think deserves a little more attention.
Okay. So you kind of so you're trying to have some goals and trying to move full time,
exactly.
But you really are allowing the body politic, I guess, of what you see ongoing to kind of determine your path of what you focus on. That's great. Are you solo still, or you have any help?
Pretty much solo.
Okay.
I do the writing, recording, everything pretty much myself.
Okay. Well, yeah, they make me do that on the show. That's my job. And you see, so hush, Bishop.
Bottle washer.
Yeah, I've tried. Hey, I even bring you food sometimes too. I want to hear it. Yeah.
That's why we around, Peter.
See, if we had a guest in studio, I'd feed them. But you're not really that
Nice.
much of a guest, so When I asked Steven, I said, "Have you ever been to Fayetteville?" He says, "Yeah, passing through." Maybe a wedding or something he'd been at.
Yeah.
So, okay, so not really much interfacing with traditional media because, like you said, they have whole newsrooms and cadres of people that are creating these things and reporting on. I think I'm familiar with the be careful what you say to these guys because they will take you out of context. Luckily, I have experience with that over 20-some years in business that I just know to make sure you say no off the record before you start talking. And usually they honor that, usually. So don't know if you know, but Bishop ran for mayor here a few years ago. And so he had to turn in his black card, though. He wasn't allowed to be a black person after that. He was quite a bit of a Tom after he ran. And but we're still fighting.
I've tried to get it back.
Have you?
Times I've sent in requests to have my black card reinstated. Unfortunately, the committee that authorizes the reinstatement of the black card has been unavailable and unwilling to talk. So I've kind of been in limbo. I'm kind of racially fluid right now. I'm not accepted. I don't have a black card, but I don't have white credit. So I'm kind of in the middle here.
Well,
I'm in the middle.
We got plenty of white privilege for you, buddy. It's okay. Yeah. I'll pass them out. Go ahead, Stephen.
I think anyone can be white if they try hard enough.
I'm pretty sure I could. I mean, it's funny. When I ran for mayor here in Fayetteville, after the election, a gentleman walked up to me. I was in the parking lot of the grocery store, and he says to me, "You're J. Antoine Minor, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man, if I would have knew you were black, I would have voted for you." And I kind of looked. He said, "Sorry, your name is white. Your name John Minor. You got a white name." He said, "I'd rather the devil I knew than the one I didn't know."
And we have a black Democrat incumbent mayor too, so that's really saying something.
Oh yeah.
But so, Stephen, what do you think about the identity politics? Do you feel like in our situation here, we are 65% majority minority. I mean, this is a very African-American town, heavily Democrat. There's 50,000 Republicans registered to vote in Cumberland County versus 150,000 Democrats and unaffiliated. So I'm just lumping them all in. So you basically got 3-1 Republicans, Democrats. But in the last cycle, I want to say 2022 and 2020, there was definitely a lot of people, and Bishop can vouch for this, there were many people that were elected because they just kind of were the right race, gender, and I don't know what else, race, gender, and party, I guess, at the right time, and people just check the box. Now, I've seen it, and I feel like it's starting to turn a little bit with people's opinions, especially with Donald Trump winning the office this time. But what do you see in Wake County? Like, do you think that grip of identity politics is still as strong as it ever was, or do you see some cracks? What do you think?
No, I think Wake County is probably a little more fluid just due to the fact that such a large percentage of our population is people who just arrived. So I think there hasn't been as much time to have developed sort of those strong lines on perhaps, racial or communities like that. I think it is more more ideological, people who lean left vote Democrat, people who are liberal vote Democrat. And, that is the people who have been moving to Wake County en masse over the past couple decades. I think, Trump in 2024 got more votes in Wake County than Bush did, who is the last Republican president to win Wake County. Trump got more votes, but, the Democrats got a whole lot more votes than that because just of the people moving to Wake County there. They come already believing things. And, I think one thing I've seen in local politics is people underestimate how easy it is. Sorry, they overestimate how easy it is to change people's minds. It's like, okay, no, actually people hold on to their beliefs pretty strongly. In terms of the identity politics, I don't know if there's as much of that. There definitely is some. But generally I think it's more, they vote Democrat, and there is some of that radical, neo-Marxism where it's intersectionality, sort of adding up your oppression points. There definitely is some of that. But yeah, I don't know.
How many oppression points can we give Bishop? How many does he get? Black male veteran.
One.
Heterosexual,
I'm
I think.
Not sure veteran might count against you now. So he gets one for being black. I'm sorry, male. Nope, wrong side of things. Veteran, probably wrong side of things. So I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it was just today. I was on Facebook, and there was this girl that posted some very racy photos, and she said she was looking for a girlfriend. And I said, I identify as an angry 25-year-old female with daddy issues. And I'm waiting for her to DM me. But so, yeah, the identity stuff, man, you can be just as fluid as you want to be. But Bishop, he identifies hetero. I know.
Yeah.
So,
I'm hetero.
Yeah, well. Okay, so let's see.
Go
ahead, Bishop.
I know you're on TikTok. How has the censorship, not just on TikTok, but just across platforms, have you experienced a lot of censorship, and how have you navigated that to get your message out, or to get the message out?
Yeah, so my first Facebook page that I created to report on local news was deleted by Facebook because of my January 6th arrest. So that was my first run-in with censorship. You know, I do have an account on TikTok now, but my first account, which had more followers, was removed because I talked about too many controversial topics. You know, I think I might have mentioned the Proud Boys one too many times, or maybe January 6th, or something like that. So I definitely have lost accounts before, lost some reach. Right now, my main platform is definitely Twitter, or X as it's now known. I still call it Twitter. You know, that even before Musk took over, that was the freest for me in terms of what I could put out and who I could connect with. But over the past couple of years, I more shifted my efforts to bring people over to my Substack. That's the platform that probably, you know, the least censorious that I'm aware of. It's not as much social media, but it allows me to publish articles and get people's emails and publish directly to them instead of having it be mediated through big tech algorithms, where maybe you say the wrong word and it gets dumped in the bin instead of being shown to people who have clicked the follow button on your profile. Whereas once I get your email, I can send you whatever I want, though. I only send good stuff.
Yeah. So, Stephen, I didn't want to preface your introduction with he went to the clink in the January 6th issue, but because again, I've been following you on TikTok, and I don't remember seeing you kind of report on yourself on what happened, but do you mind sharing your role and with you storming the Capitol to take over our government and stuff like that? You want?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just kidding.
So you're definitely correct. I tend to talk more about other people than I talk about myself. You know, I maybe a little too much. You know, maybe I should be a little more transparent. I have a couple of videos up and stuff, but yeah. So you know, I went to I went to DC on January 6th. I had never been to a Trump rally before. I'm on the right, but you know, I didn't vote for Trump for some more personal character reasons, not his policies. But I you know, sort of looked at the MAGA movement, and it's obviously something different than any other Republican candidate recently has been able to muster. So I really wanted to attend a Trump rally in person, but I kept procrastinating. You know, I think Trump even was one of his rallies in Fayetteville in the late 2020. But I almost went to that, but I didn't. And so I saw after the election, there was, you know, the Stop the Steal Million MAGA March in DC. And then I saw in January, there was going to be a rally that Trump himself was going to go to. So I was like, okay, I got to go to that one. If this might be the last Trump rally ever, I got to go to that one if I want to see it in person. So I brought the gear, the camera I had made for covering the rioting, because I had seen, you know, you might remember some of the videos of those two rallies in November and December where Antifa had been attacking Trump supporters and whatnot. So I was like, I'll bring my equipment in case I get to, in case I come across anything like that, I'll document it, publish it. But what I came across was very different. I came across something way bigger than that, but I still, strapped my camera on, started recording, and followed the crowd into the Capitol.
Okay.
And the feds didn't take too kindly to that.
Well, the government doesn't like competition with stealing. I know that, but the guys, did you feel like you were doing something wrong at the time? And I don't know the outcome of your. Are you all done with the legal issues there?
Yeah, so I went to trial in D.C. and I got convicted, which was, kind of what I was expecting from a D.C. jury. And then I got pardoned by Trump, so we're all good now.
Okay. So what were you actually convicted of?
Yeah, so I was charged with the same 4 misdemeanors that pretty much all the January 6th defendants were. So it was like entering a restricted area, like disorderly conduct in a restricted area, like protesting in the Capitol, and one other one that was basically the same thing.
Okay. So pretty much, and that's what I didn't know. So pretty much that was the general, everybody had the same 4 kind of charges. Okay. I didn't realize
that was what I was convicted of.
So it was kind of a blanket application. If they just caught you in there, they hit you with 4 charges.
Yeah. So when I was, to go to your question of like, did I feel like I was doing anything wrong? At the time, I didn't, because, I thought the First Amendment would mean that I would be held to the same standard as all of the mainstream media journalists who are around me, who also entered through, these doors that had been broken open without going through security. I thought I would be held to the same standard. The Department of Justice decided that I would not be, and the courts decided that that was up to the Department of Justice to make that decision.
So other journalists were going through there. So what makes you special? Why weren't you considered a journalist? Because you had a follow. I mean, you had things published at that time, didn't you?
Yeah. So I only had a very small following. And I didn't have any affiliation with, a major corporation. So I didn't have the leverage. I couldn't make a big stink about it.
Right. But you had some body of work that you had been reporting. So it wouldn't have been like you just made up the journalism claim when you got caught.
They lied about that at trial. The lawyer specifically said that, the lawyer for the government, Ashley Akers, who is a real piece of work. She resigned after Trump came into office, but she said, he invented that he was a journalist to avoid his criminal liability. And it's like, no, like, we gave you all the evidence. The FBI reviewed my Facebook page before it was deleted. But yeah, they can just, if you're a lawyer working for the government, you have a lot of leeway in lying and getting away with it. I'll just say that.
Yes, absolutely. We saw a lot of that over last summer with Trump and the convictions and just kangaroo courts. I mean, they talk about weaponizing our court system. They have done it, and it's scary. So how much did that cost you to fight City Hall? Was that quite a bit of not a number, but I mean, was it more than a couple of lunch monies?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was able to fundraise, I think like 10 or 12,000, but yeah, most of that came out of my own pocket.
Wow.
And so, what am I going to say? Don't quit your day job, kid. Is that what I'm going to tell you? I mean, so what do you? So through you were homeschooled and all that stuff, and we kind of were talking about that earlier. What's your stock in trade now? I know you're probably going to starve and be under one bare light bulb if you keep doing the journalism. So, what is it you do? Technical background.
I don't talk about my day job too much. Just to avoid making it a target for people to go after.
Fair enough.
I've definitely done that with other activists or other journalists even. But yeah, if people want me to make my living as a journalist, they can go to thisweekinthetriangle.com. That's on Substack, and you can sign up to be a paying supporter. And then I would love to do journalism full time, because this is really my passion. Maybe not so much the talking in front of a camera, but the researching, the putting facts together, digging things up. That's really my passion. I think that's more where my talents lie than talking or being in front of a camera or even writing. So
sure.
Have you taken advantage of the I guess the new program that the White House has put out, that Caroline Leavitt has put out, where they are allowing independent journalists to have a seat in the press briefing room at the White House?
Well, the last time I went to D.C. to do some journalism, it didn't turn out too well. but to be a little more serious, I mostly focus on local news, specifically, not even state news. So yeah, I heard about that, and I think that's a great opportunity for independent journalists. But I don't really focus on covering national news, so it's probably not the right opportunity for me.
Gotcha.
Hey, you know what? You're in good company there, because I try to tell people the federal government is in our pocket once a year on April 15th, which is more than enough. But the local politic, I do property management and restaurants and stuff like that. And I had 7 or 8 code enforcement letters on my desk last week. So the local government is in my pocket much more often, and needs much more attention from me than the Fed. I'm not saying to let them go, the federal, but I don't know. I think it'd be kind of cool if you could sit in that room and bring back some of that insider perspective. I think it really would be. Well, didn't they have like 6,000 applicants like overnight? Probably. When that opened up? It was nuts. I had one episode a few episodes back where I pretty much fangirled over Caroline Levitt. I just played some clips. You remember that, Bishop? You probably weren't on. But okay, so keep you out of D.C. is a good idea. Okay. So what's some hot topics you're looking at in North Carolina legislature? The last thing that I mentioned, the last show, the DAVE Act had just been proposed by, I think it was Senator Berger, and our local guy, Tom McInnes, was involved with that too. I think it just went to the House. But is there anything going on up there that's, there's always things going on, but what's caught your attention this week?
Yeah, so just recently, the Senate released their budget proposal, and one of the interesting things to me was that they're in the bill is that they want to get rid of some of the DEI or affirmative action for government contracting that is currently in North Carolina law. So that was the first thing that came to mind earlier this year when they were talking about investigating DEI in the universities or whatever. Like, I'm thinking like, hey, there are state laws like minority business participation goals, the participation administration historically underutilizes businesses. So basically, what these laws say is they list all these categories. So it's basically, if you're anyone but a white male who is not handicapped, you get somewhat preferential. Is not to the level of like set asides or it's not too much, but there's all these laws where it's like, okay, these are all the categories. Basically, that almost the same framework as intersectionality, even though it's probably passed, before that was really a mainstream thing. And so, that's one of the things that this budget proposal would do is sort of, get rid of these. I think I saw that like the, one of these state agencies that run some of these programs is like $1.7 million a year or something like that to I guess
do
like
what?
Try to inform. One of the requirements is that like they have to like put out notice for like minority or women-owned businesses for government contracts. But to me, it's like, why can't they figure out the same way everyone else does? Like, I assume, I'm not a government contractor, but I assume that, if you're a government contractor, there are ways that you find out what the contracts are. But apparently, like I signed up for the city of Raleigh, you can sign up for their minority and women-owned businesses email list. So you just get emails for government contracts that you can apply for as a minority or women-owned business, but like the same contracts that you can apply for if you're not. So like, I don't think this really, I don't know how much of an effect it actually has, because like, if you're a contractor, what do? Well, you put your business, 51% in your wife's name, and then, now you're a minority or women-owned business. Right, so I don't think it like actually helps people who are, who are struggling or disadvantaged, but it's just absurd that we have it on the books.
Well, the whole DEI thing, just think about it. There's a special list for people of color and women. And, at what point does it become insulting to them as a group and a population that they need to be specially spoken to? Like, you're not good enough to learn it from where everybody else does, but we gotta special talk to you. Bishop, you want me to talk to you special?
I'm insulted by it.
Are you?
I am. I'm
Why?
very by it
Because you didn't get the contract?
Yeah. Like, why? I mean, listen.
Find your words, Bishop.
Listen, if Jasmine Crockett can get elected to Congress, I should be able to apply for any loan, any job, anywhere and get approved. I just should. Because, on the serious note, you look at DEI and you look at this diversity stuff. I always say DEI stands for didn't even interview. You just walked in, they looked at the color of your skin, they looked at your gender, and you got the job. No qualifications verified, no serious vetting, just let's check the box. I am offended by that because what it said, I'm offended when you do stuff for women-owned businesses. I've always said it, when a woman has to go get a grant that is specifically for women-owned businesses, to me it says that the government didn't feel that you as a woman could do this on your own, so they put a special program aside to help you because they felt you were helpless. I feel the same way about all DEI projects and programs. It says that the individuals are incapable of doing this without our help. And they're not qualified to do this. So we're going to remove the qualifications and the job becomes a participation trophy. You showed up, we gave it to you. Screw it up if you must, but numbers checked, box checked, case closed.
I think it was well intentioned when it started, but it just turns into it, as all government programs left to run amok, they all kind of morph into something completely unholy.
Well, I think I'm a little different because I believe the DEI executive order was issued by LBJ. I don't think anything LBJ issued had good intention, especially not for the black community.
No, not at all.
He had his intentions to the black community were nefarious. Point blank, period, full stop on my end. So the minute I found out that it was a LBJ thing, I was like, y'all should have knew right there. He was set y'all up for failure.
Well, he said if he gives y'all food and shelter, he'll have blacks voting Democrat for 200 years? Is that what he said, or was it 100 years?
But we ain't gonna say it on here.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna say what he said either. But I mean,
don't say it, Peter.
I ain't saying it. I don't have my black card like that, and that hard R will get me in trouble. So no, I ain't saying that. No way.
That soft A.
Yeah, no. So, and there's Bishop trying to get me in trouble again, Stephen. So step in at any time, please.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, going back to that idea of was it good intention? I think some of the early Supreme Court rulings, in terms of affirmative action, they were, they explicitly wrote hey, we expect this to be phased out in this number of decades, and now we are at the end of this, and it's okay, well, it didn't sort of work out how you said it would, where this would bring racial equality. So it's okay, well, you said it was going to work, but it didn't. And in fact, some of the perverse incentives you've set up have, worsened things, some of the things with welfare, if you're giving more money to women, if they're not married and they have children, that discourages them being married. This is pretty basic math. And so a lot of these programs, I think that the idea you're kind of getting at is these don't incentivize people to try their hardest, to work their best. It's just giving it to them. If you're going to pass a class, what incentive do you have to study?
Exactly.
Regardless.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've said it before. We incentivize the wrong behaviors. And again, were you on when I talked about the food trucks and the EBT and the how they game the system? The food trucks buying their food with the EBT card. I didn't tell. Okay, so I found out about a food truck that they used their EBT card to buy the food they were selling on the food truck.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Okay, and we were like, you know what? Good for you, because you gamed the system. You got away with it. Now the house is always going to win, and you're probably going to end up in prison or something's going to happen to you. But good for them because they took advantage of the government that was set up to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So they figured out the hustle. What's that now?
I wouldn't say good for them. If you're violating social rules, social norms, engaging in generally antisocial behavior, I'm not going to give you any points for hustling the system.
Fair enough.
So a lot of the structures we have work because we work together towards the same goal without explicitly having to force each other. Like if you pick up a piece of litter on the street, if everyone does that, you're going to have cleaner streets. If you have to make people pick up litter, well, that's kind of a drag.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Well, and look, I have a little more gray, and so does Bishop. So I think we just want peace in our lives, and we don't want to get angry at every infraction we see. It's like, look, good for them.
That's why we have a harder time than some of the previous generations.
Well, let your kids worry about it. That's what we've done.
But you see the same concept even with No Child Left Behind, which is why we have so many young people who, I had a young man working for me in the summer who was selling a product. The product was $4. The lady gave him a $20 bill. He could not tell her what the change was, so he was going to give her the product and the $20 back because his brain couldn't compute $4 out of 20. This is what happens. When you do this whole No Child Left Behind, like you said, when there's no incentive to study and to learn because I've heard children say it. Oh, I don't care. They're going to pass me anyway. You've set them up for ultimate failure. Mm-hmm. There has to be intellectual input and intellectual buy-in. And I think even for me and Peter, when we look at you gamed the system, the kudos is not really kudos you gamed the system. It's like, okay, but you're about to get caught. You're going to jail. The hammer's coming. It's coming. You just keep going. Keep going. Keep like you have these businesses now that they know you cannot sell hot food to people who are purchasing with food stamps. It can only be cold food. Mm-hmm. So they'll sell the food cold, pay for it, and then heat it up. Mm-hmm. And now they got hot food. So they found all of these workarounds and loopholes. And the danger with that is that all good things, as they say, come to an end. Absolutely. And you will find yourself paying the piper. And you will find yourself in a world of hurt because you're trying to game a system, as Peter said, that is designed that the house will win. Mm-hmm. It is going to win. You may think you're getting away with it. You may think, oh, I'm using my food. I was talking to someone the other day about food stamps, talking to a young lady about food stamps. And I said, I think food stamps should have tighter restrictions. Like when you show up, back in the day when I got food stamps years ago, it came in the books. You had to tear the food stamps out the book. And you had an ID card that you had to go to the check cashing place and redeem your food stamps. I think, this is just me, when it comes to food stamps, you should have to present an ID card at the cash register to make sure that the person receiving the food stamps is the person that is spending the food stamps, unless you have an alternate spender or whatever on your case, because you got people who get food stamps, they sell them 50 cents on the dollar, they'll give you $100 worth of food stamps for $50 in cash. Mm-hmm. And they don't really need the food stamps.
But that's the hustle, Bishop. I mean, and that's the thing. We've kind of taught people to don't be intellectually curious. With the No Child Left Behind, that we were teaching tests and not teaching them to think. Okay, so we've taken away the intellectual curiosity of several generations at this point of people, and we've left them behind with the tools of the hustle.
Yeah.
And the government didn't on purpose create a system that was cheatable, but they haven't closed the loophole either. So, and that's what I think Doge is pissing a lot of people off. Doge is pulling out the video of the liquor store being robbed, and then people are mad at the guy showing the video.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I mentioned the Dave Act earlier, because that's going to bring some accountability to our state government. State Auditor Bullock, he was on the Board of Governors at Chapel Hill or for UNC. And he's the one that he helped to get the DEI money reallocated for the campus police. So he basically took the money out of the DEI funding and gave it to them. So I thought that was a pretty bold move on his part. So do we have anybody getting deported from Wake County lately?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are some ICE raids in Durham, that made the news because the neighbors were filming them, being like, why are you taking these poor, innocent, illegal aliens? I haven't heard the raids aren't necessarily publicized. We do have this new law that requires ICE or requires local cooperation with ICE detainers. So supposedly that should eliminate the sanctuary counties like Wake or Chatham or Durham or I think Orange. I think they all have those sanctuary policies where they wouldn't cooperate with ICE. We'll see how that works in practice.
Let's discuss that a minute. So look, what that law discusses is the sheriffs in certain counties, of course, it just happens to be the blue-leaning counties, not my fault, they refuse to work with ICE, which is a federal agency. Now, Bishop, I'm going to ask you, where these sheriffs get the balls not to cooperate with a federal? How can they say, I uphold the law, and then say, I'm not going to cooperate with the federal government?
Well, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a second, because the sheriff is the chief executive of the county, having arrest powers.
Right.
The sheriff, his position is constitutional, and so if you look at even during COVID, you had counties, you had states, you had municipalities that were pushing back against lockdown mandates, because being that we are a federalist system, a federalist society. We are a federalist republic. The federal government has limited authority on the local level. They can issue these federal edicts, but some of this stuff, if it is not, especially if it's an executive order, they can push back against this stuff. And so many of the sheriffs were like, well, listen, I'm the chief executive of this county having arrest powers. Nothing happens in this county that doesn't go through the sheriff's office. So we're not doing it. You see this even in Florida.
Okay.
The only difference is in Florida, you got, it's a red state. So, I forget the sheriff's name.
My favorite one, Sheriff Grady Judd.
Yeah.
Grady Judd?
He's the one who told the people, if you steal somebody's car and you get shot, you ask for it.
No,
so,
they're gonna get shot a lot. I like when he pauses and enunciates
but
that.
Many of the sheriffs feel that they have the ability to kind of push back constitutionally, and then as soon as it happens, we go into these conflicts or these constitutional crises.
But
all
to not follow the ICE detainer means that we had elected sheriffs in our state actively refusing to hold on to, if they pulled over an illegal alien for speeding or whatever else, they actively were saying, no, I'm not going to hold on to this person for ICE to come get them.
The reason they felt emboldened, I believe, is because of so much of the media kind of harping that tune and harping that horn and making them feel emboldened. Like if there was any repercussions from the federal government, whether it's through funding or whatever, they felt emboldened to stand and kind of beat their chest and we're not going to comply, and we're not going to do this, and we're not going to do that, because they got all of the talking heads behind them, and they got a large portion of especially in these blue counties, a large portion of their community that votes for them has been brainwashed to believe that assisting ICE is doing the devil's work. And so they feel emboldened. They're like, listen, my job is safe, because if I do this, if I stand up against Trump, if I stand up against these detainer orders, then I'm seen as the local hero, and that does nothing but bolster
Yeah.
my voting
Okay,
base.
local hero to people who are illegal aliens and can't vote. Who are we the hero to?
The blue people that vote for them.
And look, if you take the oath, my friend, you were in the military, you took the oath to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Mm-hmm.
So how, whether you like Trump or not, it's a federal law. I mean, it killed. Okay, so Stephen, what reporting? So what have you touched on with any illegal immigration up there?
So I'll get into the stories, but first I will say you're correct on federalism. Okay, I am all about federalism. You know, they've been trying to erode federalism, even though that is the main. You know, if you think of checks and balances, the main check and balance is the balance of power between the federal government and the state government. They have been eroding that, especially with the incorporation of the Bill of Rights. Now, I won't get into that, but you're absolutely right about federalism. That there should be a balance of power there. But in terms of some of the actual reporting I've done, you know, some of the stories I've looked into, you may have heard there was a couple years back, there was a sheriff's deputy in Wake County named Ned Bird who was ambushed and murdered late at night in eastern Wake County, sort of rural area. Since then, 2 illegal aliens who are brothers were charged in the murder. A third brother was charged with trying to conceal the vehicle they were driving the night they allegedly shot the deputy. Mm-hmm. And a fourth sibling, the sister, was charged for helping one of the brothers break out of jail and flee to Mexico. So 4 siblings, all illegal aliens from Mexico, all charged in relation to this murder. And after Trump got in office, they just got, you know, the brother who made it to Mexico, they got him extradited back to North Carolina. So I think there'll be a trial for him on that murder. But one of the things that is astonishing to me is I went back and looked how many times they had contact with law enforcement, because they had been, those 2 brothers charged with the murder, they had been pulled over. I want to say it was like 19 times combined. Wow. And a lot of those charges were for driving without a license, driving without plates, driving without registration. Because apparently this is pretty common for the illegals around here, is they're probably not insured, they're not licensed, they don't have proper plates. But then when they get pulled over, what happens? They're not even arrested so that, you know, ICE could file a detainer. Instead, they just get a ticket. You know, and they keep doing it over and over again. You know, how many times can you get arrested for driving without a license before they actually do something to stop you from continuing to do it? Apparently a lot.
Did those incidents occur after they murdered the sheriff deputy?
No, before.
Okay, so
10 years prior.
Okay, all right. I'm just thinking, how many interactions did they have after the murder, and they weren't even picked up on?
They got him pretty quickly.
Okay, good.
Because they're able to, you know, it's a pretty rural area, so they're able to use the cell phone data and narrow down which devices belong to them, and then, you know, track them back to where they lived in Raleigh. I think maybe one of them lived in Garner. And then, you know, they tried to flee the state, and I think they caught them in one of the western counties with the state highway patrol.
Well, fortunately, most criminals today are not Al Capone, so they're not very good at their trade, and everybody in jail is innocent. So,
yeah, exactly, and that's what I'm just going to say.
If they were any good at it, they wouldn't be caught. So.
Yeah, is that we have not been exhausting our law enforcement capabilities in terms of pursuing illegal aliens. Like you see so many cases like, well, they just let them get away with it. There's always been some prosecution of illegal aliens, some deportation, but, you know, we have not yet reached our capabilities in terms of getting these people out of our country who we did not invite to be here.
You know what I'm thinking, and maybe this Dave
Bullock,
Doge, or somebody, one of them. I'm always of the belief, follow the money. I could be wrong, but I think we need to follow the money to see if these sheriffs in these blue counties are receiving some type of compensation for not assisting. Like, there has to be, you know, I played devil's advocate earlier, but at the end of the day, they should comply, and anytime law enforcement calls for assistance, there's just a code in law enforcement that when an agency calls for help, you show up.
Yeah.
And if they're not showing up and they're not assisting, I am of the belief that there is some incentive, something that is incentivizing these sheriffs and in these counties and these states, state law enforcement officers and stuff. There's something incentivizing them to say, I'm not going to help, and I fear no consequences. I just don't believe that they're just doing this just haphazardly. I believe that there is some incentive, and I think the only way to find that out is through a Doge or a Dave or something.
Well, Dave is much different than Doge. Like the Dave Act is going to enable them to just do a lot of data mining and look at different agencies in our state government that say have empty seats. Like say they have employees they haven't hired or just empty positions, but we're still funding them. They'll have the ability to then trim those because there's no point to fund it for another 5 years. If it's been 5 years since we could fill the position, just get rid of it. Well, stop funding it.
We need a COGE,
COGE,
County Office of Government Efficiency, to come into these counties and follow the money, because I'm telling you, there's some stuff going on.
Come with me tomorrow. I have the Civic Center Commission meeting, and let's see how much money we miss from the Crown Coliseum. We gross over $12 million a year, but somehow my P&L that they hand me as a commissioner starts with $7 million. Only 3, 4, 5 million missing in between. Now, they did explain it to me. The general manager did explain it to me last meeting, and I just kind of glazed over. I was like, okay, look, say that again like I'm a golden retriever. Like, simplify that. But we're going to get there. But it takes citizens to participate. Yeah. A lot of keyboard warriors out there, and I know, Stephen, you know what I'm talking about. Look, how many times, Bishop, have you seen me lately, if I comment on anything on Facebook, that I just send them the link to the boards and commissions, say, hey, we'd love a guy like you. Mm-hmm. You know, the ones that bitch the most, they don't participate except on make a scene on Facebook. Mm-hmm. Stephen, do you got any big fans that constantly troll you? You got a few?
Not too much. Maybe a couple now and then.
Well, I want you to work at it. You know, I really think it's a red badge of courage when you live rent free in somebody's head. It really is, and I recommend it. So, so Bishop, I don't know. So a little bit of local news here. The last weekend, my Sunday morning, Easter, I was woken up to a phone call from a council person to be told that there was a murder in one of my managed properties out there on Yadkin Road, but they managed to. It was a strip joint. So, okay. It was 3:00 in the morning, but they basically spilled out and they killed each other in the next door parking lot. And then there was a shooting at Market Fair Mall about 1:30 in the morning over a seat. And then earlier Saturday night, there was a wife that ran over her husband in his front yard. It was like the day of blood in Fayetteville on Saturday night.
Really long driveway?
I don't know, man. But the one thing that happens whenever we have a murder or whatever else is we get all these people saying, well, we need a chief of police. We need where's the mayor? Where's the city council? And it's all the people that don't understand you can't legislate the heart of the people in our community. If somebody's going to rob, cheat, steal, shoot, they're going to do it. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately. They talk about, well, young men need conflict resolution skills. So you want to add that to your summer camp, Bishop?
I probably will. I'm so blessed to live in one of the safest cities in North Carolina, Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Listen, I don't think it's that bad. I mean, look, if you're Police Chief Medlock, who's like 3 chiefs back at this point, I remember there was a shooting at a strip joint on Bragg Boulevard. Like 2 strippers got killed. It was bad. And he's on WTVD or something, and they're interviewing him, and they're trying to put him on the defensive, like, well, what could you have done? And he's like, look, the gist of it was, if you're in bed by 11:30 at night and you're not out here, you're safe.
That's why
if you're out looking for no good, you're going to find it.
That's why I'm in bed by 8, Peter.
Yeah. Well, you got to have your beauty sleep. You're a little in arrears, so...
I know. You see, look. Take work. Okay. This takes work.
So, Stephen, what are you going to be when you grow up? What do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you think?
Well, I like to be a full-time independent journalist, but we'll see if I can make that happen.
Okay.
Plan.
And any plans to branch out maybe geographically and start exposing a larger number of stories?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I've pondered that a little. Might start a podcast or something. Maybe try to get on the local radio. I don't know.
That's a good step.
Yeah.
Well, look, so I don't know if you looked into me before you jumped on, but I ran for office a couple times. But I didn't make it, but I stay involved. And so by the time this airs, the first GOP executive committee meeting would have happened already, which is tomorrow, Tuesday, whether they like me or not. So I think you mentioned earlier, maybe you're not everybody's cup of tea as a Republican, if you're registered that way. Was that what you said earlier, Stephen?
I'm not sure I recall what you're referring to.
Okay.
But I did recently register as a Republican, so I could
all right.
attend conventions. I love conventions.
Okay, well, I think maybe you mentioned something about President Trump, and that's fine the only thing I'm trying to point out with that is that I appreciate that, because not every Republican is a MAGA Republican. Not every Republican has to be what somebody else thinks. And there is no litmus test of what makes a good Republican. But to me, it's the people that show up. And I mean, look at Bishop. He had to give up his race card.
I did.
I pissed off lots of people because I point out people in our own party who are idiots and inept and don't belong anywhere near the ballot box.
Yeah.
And the other thing we get vilified for here locally is we, God forbid, offer to speak to Democrats, because I don't think the Democrats are unilaterally stupid as our party would have us believe. So I feel like it's more of a neighborly type thing to try to work across those aisles to get things done, because the issues we have here in Cumberland County, clean water from the PFAS issue, school funding, we're about $800 million behind on capital work in our school system, not to mention the schools are garbage anyway. So, we need a new superintendent of schools. We need a new chief of police. I mean, we have a lot of needs that go over the partisan rah-rah part of it. And anyway, so maybe I'm a soft Republican. They don't like that, but that's okay.
A little squishy.
So before we get out of here, Stephen, any parting words of advice, or tell us where to find you? I was running your website on the ticker here. I'll do it again, but tell us about what we'll find there.
Yeah, so thisweekinthetriangle.com, that's my Substack where I publish articles, publish weekly roundups of news. Just put in your email and I can publish straight to you without worrying about big tech censorship or algorithms or whatnot. So yeah, I just report on local news here in the Greater Triangle area. Not quite all the way to Cumberland County, but I do some stories in Harnett occasionally. But yeah, so I just try to focus on some stories that maybe the mainstream media doesn't cover as much, or maybe provide a little bit of a different perspective, or put some facts or ideas together that might be a little different than the worldview and editorial policy they tend to go. So yeah, that's what you'll find. In terms of closing thoughts, I think some of what you said about kind of focusing locally definitely resonates with me. I made the decision to focus on local news instead of, national or even state politics, because I think that's really where people have the most opportunity to make an impact. If you're focusing on what's going on in California or Portland, maybe that's some really crazy stuff, but honestly, what are you going to do about it? Whereas what's happening in your backyard might not be as crazy. It might not be as newsworthy. It might not make as good headlines, but it's also, you have more opportunity to be able to exert some power, some influence to move things in the right direction.
Agreed. Well, and as you said that, I'm thinking, I did see one TikTok where you did debunk somebody else recently, something about if a woman has an abortion, then they're going to be held liable to go to jail or something.
Yeah, it was a bill that was proposed in the North Carolina legislature by Keith Kidwell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'd like to see more of that. That was, I don't know how often you do the debunking reels, but that one was pretty good. I enjoyed that one. So, Bishop?
Yes, sir.
What you got going on? What you got going on the next week we want to talk about? Anything before we get out of here?
Nothing, just still preparing for the summer camp, and I'll be at the executive committee meeting tomorrow as a member of the executive committee. So I'll be there. And
are you an executive?
I am.
You think I am too? I think you are. I don't know if I'm on the list. They might have taken me off.
Yeah, I'm on there. I got voted in during convention, so I'm excited about that. We'll see. Last time it happened, they illegally removed me. So this time we have a new board. So I'm assuming that I'll still be on there come tomorrow, and we'll get some party business done and really move the county in the right direction, and to get some things done. So that's really all I have coming up this week. We're preparing for May, I think it's May 7th, our community salutes. And we'll have John Gobrick on next week.
Absolutely.
Talking about the Our Community Salutes event. I serve as the chaplain for the Fayetteville chapter, and so just excited about that. My daughter will be at
Dogwood Festival. Yep. Is she in a pageant?
She is going to be Princess Tiana.
Okay.
This year at Dogwood, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, by the time this airs, Dogwood, I think, would be in its last day or so, but she'll be there on the 26th all day. She has her little costume, and she's working on making sure her hair looks as close to Tiana as possible. She's my little princess, so now she can be the princess for everybody, but I am taking her back.
Well, she is Sweet 16, my friend. She just turned, so, you know.
She is. But I'm at the end of Dogwood. She's coming back, and she's only my princess. So y'all can have her for several hours, but after that, get hands off.
Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing you. So do me a favor. Save me a seat at the XCOM tomorrow. I'm going to be coming late. I'm going to be on Bishop time tomorrow. But only because I got a conflict. I got a 5:30 meeting, so I'll be there by 6:30 probably. But Mr. Horn, welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning. It was really a pleasure having you. I look forward to seeing you prosper and excel in what you're doing. And of course, I think you and Bishop need to find each other on TikTok for sure, because he's got a pretty good following too.
I was looking for what is your at on TikTok?
Yeah, it's Stephen Horn Reports.
So Stephen Horn Reports on TikTok.
Yeah. Is that STEVEN?
PH. STEPHEN.horn.reports.
All right, I'm about to HORNE.
HORN. No E.
Bishop, look at the screen. His name's on screen, brother.
Oh, I can't see
right there. You can't see it? Okay.
You said
my
Stephen
bad. Horn, HORN.
Reports.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm looking for you now.
All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for being here. Until next time, we're the Carolina Cabinet, and we'll see you in a week. Thank you.
Absolutely.